Hello and welcome to LBC Irregulars, a Sherlock Holmes podcast radio episode brought to you by the LONGBOX CRUSADE. This is episode 12 of the radio show series. On this episode, we will listen to The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Limping Ghost, Season 6, Episode 1. It aired on September 3rd, 1945, and it featured Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce. I want to give a thanks to the Arthur Conan Doyle Encyclopedia website. They keep me straight on all these numberings of seasons and whatnot. Now, after we listen to the show, my guests and I will discuss our thoughts on it. We invite you to be part of that conversation. You can leave us a voicemail with your thoughts at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX. Or you can comment on the show at LONGBOX CRUSADE, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Or you go old school and contact us with email, contact@longboxcrusade.com. Your comments might just get played on a future episode. Now it's time for the show. Let us dim the lights and travel back in our minds to a London of the past, through the chilled and foggy streets of London to 221B Baker Street.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in The New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another of his fascinating stories about his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. You know, we're really happy to be back with you once again, and we're looking forward to getting together at this time every week from here on out. And I hope you won't mind if every once in a while I sort of get a word in edgewise about Petri wines. You know, and I really mean this. Petri wines are wonderful wines. For instance, right now, I wish I could give you a glass of Petri California port. You could hold that Petri port up to the light and look at its clear, deep red color. You could smell that luscious grape aroma. And best of all, you could taste that Petri port. What a flavor. That Petri port just sort of rolls around on your tongue, and oh boy, is that ever good. Try Petri port after dinner some evening, or try it when some friends drop in. You can serve it proudly because, after all, the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now let's look in on our good friend Dr. Watson and see if he's expecting us.
Come in, Mr. Bartell. You're just the man I've been expecting.
How are you, Dr. Watson? It's good to see you again.
Thank you, my boy. It's very nice to see you again, too. I've missed our Monday night visits during the last 3 months. Sit yourself down. Would you care to join me in a glass of port?
Well, thanks, Doctor. That'd be nice. You know, it seems to me after our summer vacation, a toast to the great Sherlock Holmes would be in order.
That's an excellent idea. Here you are, young fellow.
Thanks. You propose the toast, Doctor.
To Sherlock Holmes, master detective and loyal friend, whose adventures have brought considerable, shall we say, fame to a certain retired doctor now living in Northern California.
I'll drink to that.
Well, now, suppose I might as well get on with tonight's story.
Which particular adventure have you selected, Doctor?
One that I call The Limping Ghost.
Sounds exciting. And, as usual, you find me saying, how did it begin?
In Baker Street on a windy December evening at the turn of the century. A young, white-faced boy sat in front of our blazing fire. And as he told us his strange story, the flickering firelight danced weird patterns on the walls. The young man was Alexander McMorris, the 7th Earl of Lochnair.
The Earl of Lochnair? Say, didn't I read in the papers the other day that the 8th Earl of Lochnair had been killed in an airplane accident?
Quite right, my boy. Even in this day and age, the tragic history of violent death seems to dog the footsteps of the Lochnair family. But to return to my story. On that December night in 1900, we heard the whole history of the Limping Ghost of Lochnair. The first Earl had lost a foot at the Battle of Flodden Field in 1513. In spite of this terrible handicap, he fought on valiantly until he died on the battlefield from loss of blood. From then on, right until the time this story begins, the Limping Ghost, clad in a suit of armor, always appeared at Lochnair Castle before and after the death of the current Earl. Yes, Mr. Bartell, it was a strange story that Sherlock Holmes and I listened to that night. A story of death and horror over the centuries, punctuated by the limping clank of ghostly armor.
Milady, I have terrible news for you. Your husband, the Earl, was killed in the explosion that destroyed Lord Darnley.
Milady, the Guy Fawkes plan to blow up the House of Parliament has failed. Your husband is in the Tower of London. They say he's to be hanged, drawn and quartered.
Madam, I regret to inform you that your husband, on my instructions, has been arrested for murder. I have no doubt hanged.
And that's the story of the Lochnares, Mr. Holmes. You were instrumental in sending my great-uncle to the gallows, a fate which he richly deserved, I'm told. So it seemed only natural to come here to Baker Street and consult you now that I'm in trouble.
I shall be most happy to do anything I can to help you, sir.
I don't remember anything about your sending the Earl of Lochnair to the scaffold, Holmes.
Well, he did, Dr. Watson.
Mm-hmm.
And the servants had always sworn the ghost really did walk at midnight on the day that he was hanged.
Indeed. Now, sir, I suggest that you tell us what problem brought you here.
The ghost is walking again, Mr. Holmes. You know what that means.
According to the legend, that the present Earl will die.
Exactly. And as I'm the present Earl, you can see why I'm rather worried.
Am I to understand that you've actually seen this ghost yourself?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. The night before last, Betty, well, that is, Miss Nolan and I were sitting in the dining hall in front of the fire when we heard a strange sound up in the musicians' gallery. We looked up and in the moonlight saw a ghostly figure in armor limping towards the staircase.
Oh, gracious me. My dear sir, you're certain that you really saw it? Moonlight can play strange tricks, you know.
There wasn't any doubt about it, Doctor. We both saw and heard it.
What did you do?
I started to go towards the stairs, but as I did so, Betty screamed and then tumbled to the floor in a heap.
Fainted, I suppose.
Yes. While I was reviving her, the ghost disappeared.
Who's staying with you at Lochnair Castle at the moment?
Well, there's Betty Nolan. She's the sister of James Nolan. He looks after my estate. Betty and I are engaged to be married.
Oh,
Yes, indeed. Anyone else staying with you?
Yes, a distant cousin of mine, Jarrod K. McMorris, an American. He turned up in England a couple of months ago with his son Walter. They're both with me at the present.
A distant cousin.
That's right, Mr. Holmes. Actually, they're descendants of a more than usually black sheep branch of the family. I don't know how long the old man's going to be with us, though. If you ask me, he's a dying man.
How do you say that, sir?
As far as I can gather, he's been wasting away for years. It's only a question of time before his strength fails him entirely. I was hoping perhaps you could take a look at him, Dr. Watson. That is, if I could persuade you and Mr. Holmes to come and stay at the castle for a few days.
Well, what about it, Holmes?
It's an intriguing problem, Watson. The current Earl of Lochnair would seem to be in danger. A cousin of his is dying of an obscure disease, and the ghost of Lochnair Castle is walking again. Yes, it's an irresistible invitation. I see no reason why we can't leave on the Scotch Express tonight. It's been quite a heavy fall of snow here in your absence, young man.
Quite so, and judging from the color of the sky, there's more to come.
Very angry looking.
Oh, now, as we round this bend, you'll be able to see the castle. Ah, yes. There you are, gentlemen.
Magnificent.
Yes, it's a fine place, all right, Doctor, though it cost me a great deal in upkeep. Matter of fact, I only have one wing open. It's always been something of a problem to get servants to come and live here. See, the local villagers have a great respect for the Lochnair ghost, you know.
What servants do you have at the castle at present?
Well, cook housekeeper, Mrs. McClintock, fine old lady who's been with me for 6 years now. And then there's old Tammas. He served my family for as long as I can remember. Well, as a matter of fact, he is now. Hello, Tammas.
I'm glad to see you back, my lord, and that's a fact.
Oh, thank you, Tammas. Oh, these gentlemen are Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson.
Good day to you, gentlemen.
Good day, Thomas, good day.
Break the trap round to the stables. I may as well break the news to you.
Yes, what's happened, Tammas?
It's your cousin, my lord. Poor old Mr. McMorris. He's dead.
What?
Died early this morning. God rest his soul.
Dead?
I'm very sorry that I arrived too late to be of any help.
Well, thank you for telling me, Tammas. Oh, you may take the trap round now.
Aye, sir. I'll bring the baggage.
So he's dead. Well, I can't say it's unexpected, but it is a shock, nevertheless.
I'm sure that it must be, particularly as you yourself told us you saw the ghost of Lochnair the night before last.
In which case,
Watson, I think we may reasonably expect another visitation. Perhaps before the night is over. Shall we go in?
This is Miss Nolan, my fiancé, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, and Dr. Watson.
I'm very glad to meet you.
How are you, Miss Nolan?
And this is her brother, James Nolan, the manager of my estate.
How do you do, sir?
How are you, Mr. Nolan?
Much better for seeing you both up here. I'm sure it won't take you long to lay this ghost business by the heel.
Oh, well, I trust you don't overestimate our abilities, Mr. Nolan.
Alec, you've heard about your cousin, of course.
Oh, yes, my dear. Tam has told us as we drove up. Where's Walter?
He went into the village with the doctor and the body of his father.
Oh.
He should be back soon.
How's he taking it?
Very quietly.
Too quietly, if you ask me. Those Americans are pretty demonstrative people, you know, and Walter has been no exception. But he behaved very strangely this morning. When the doctor told him his father was dead, he just said, now things will start to happen, and then shut up like an oyster. I can't make head or tail of the fellow.
Yes, quite so, quite so. Mr. Holmes, I expect you and Dr. Watson would like to go to your room.
Yes, I must give you...
I think first I'd like to take a look at the musicians' gallery, if you don't mind.
Oh, yes, of course. Would you excuse us, darling?
All right, Alec.
It's in the dining hall here.
They must have been very hospitable people in those days. 50 or 60 people could eat at that table.
Yes, Doctor. Needless to remark, we hardly ever use the room nowadays. There's the musicians' gallery, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, yes, I see. How do we get up there?
I'll show you. See, there's a stone staircase behind this tapestry here. Follow me. Watch your step. It's quite narrow, rather dark.
Watch your head, Watson, old chap.
Oh, don't worry about me, Holmes. I'm perfect. Oh, I say. Must have built these stairs for pygmies.
Oh, yes. Here we are, gentlemen. This is the musicians' gallery.
By Jove. It must have made a pretty picture in the days gone by. A little string orchestra fiddling away up here and some below the Scottish nobility bobbing and floating round in the intricacies of a Highland schottische or a stately gavotte or something.
Where does that door lead to?
To the bedroom wing.
And that's where the ghost appeared from the other night, I suppose.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
The door's jarred. You generally keep this door unlocked, sir?
Why, no. But the key mysteriously disappeared about a week ago. James is having a new one made, so I must remind him about that.
Alec, we're right.
Oh, we're up here, Walter. We're coming down. That's Walter McMorris. My dead cousin's son.
Poor fellow, this must be a dreadful day for him.
Yes, I'm afraid this is going to be a rather painful interview. Oh, hello, Walter. This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do?
Sherlock Holmes, huh? I've heard about you and your friend, Dr. Watson.
Walter, old man, I'm dreadfully sorry about your father.
Are you now? Isn't that nice of you? Well, you'll be sorry enough when you hear that I'm going to take you to court and prove that I'm the real Earl of Lochmere.
Walter, you're out of your mind.
Am I? No. Father was out of his because he kept quiet all these years. But I'm going to have my rights. I've looked up the records. I've had genealogists working for months. And I've got all the facts that prove you're an imposter.
Oh, man, what are you talking about?
You know well enough. When Sherlock Holmes here sent your great-uncle to the gallows 20 years ago, the title and estate should have come to my father. When I leave here tomorrow, I'm going straight to the finest lawyer in London.
Man, if you believe this, why have you said nothing about it till now?
Because I'm smart. I've found out a thing or two since I've been staying here. And one of the things I found out is that your precious fiancée and her brother wouldn't look twice at you if it weren't for your money and the title.
Shut up.
You'll find out. She's a smart little filly, and she knows what kind of a track she's running on.
You
My compliments, sir. A very professional uppercut.
Yes, and a very well-deserved one. Offensive scoundrel.
Sorry about this. Please don't say anything in front of Betty. It'll only upset her.
I quite understand. Come along, Watson. Let's go and find our rooms.
It's nearly dinner time. Why are we wandering about here in the dark instead of having a glass of sherry with the others in the library?
I'm a conscientious practitioner, Watson. I'd like to earn my fees. It occurred to me that a further examination of this dining hall might prove profitable.
Well, personally, Holmes, I think you're wasting your time on this case.
What makes you think that, old chap?
It's perfectly obvious that young American fellow was impersonating the ghost a few nights ago. He knew his father was going to die, and he wanted to build up the legend so as to make his own claim seem more believable.
That's very sound reasoning, Watson. Though to be logical in his deception, he should repeat the performance now that his father is dead.
Well, ghosts only walk at midnight, so why don't we go and have a glass of sherry? What is it, Holmes?
Someone's coming in from the library.
The lighted candle.
Yes? Who is it?
It's me, Mrs. McClintock, the hostess.
Oh, gracious me, you gave me quite a start.
I heard voices and I knew the candles were not alight in here, so I came in to see who it was. You're watching for the ghost, I suppose. Well, you'll no be disappointed, gentlemen, though you may see more than you bargained for. Those that meddle with ghostly things they do not comprehend are playing with something much more dangerous than fire. Fire burns, but the shades on dead people...
Holmes! Look up there, the gallery. The door's opening. It's the ghost!
Aye, here he comes, the poor body. See the armor on him, and the way he's dragging one leg behind him.
Yes, it's really quite an effective impersonation. And the twilight provides most appropriate light for his play acting, too.
You mean it's the young American?
Of course.
Look behind him. There's another figure.
Yes. Dressed in the same kind of armor and carrying a sword. Game's afoot, Watson.
The ghost has seen him. He's turning. The second figure's raising his sword. Look out! Great heavens! He's knocked him through the railings. That must be a 20-foot fall.
Come on, old fellow. Help me open his visor.
Just a minute.
Yes, it's Walter McMorris, the American. Though from the angle of his head, I would suggest that it might be the late Walter McMorris, eh, Watson?
He's dead, all right, Holmes. Neck broken.
Meanwhile, the second figure has been able to slip back through that door and escape us. Come on, he was dressed in armor. He can't go very fast. Perhaps we can overtake him.
Dr. Watson's story will continue in just a few seconds, which is all the time I need to tell you about Petri California Muscatel. Ever try Petri Muscatel? It's a wine that looks like sheer gold, and it's made from big, plump, juicy muscat grapes. Boy, pop one of those muscat grapes into your mouth, and you know you've got something delicious. You know that. And you get the same flavor in Petri Muscatel. It's the perfect wine to serve a lady. Women love it. And that best time to serve it is after dinner or on a Sunday afternoon, you know, times like that. But just make sure it's Petri Muscatel, because that's the way to make sure it's going to be good. Remember, Petri. And now back to tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure and the story of the Limping Ghost of Lochnair.
Confound it, Holmes. There's no trace of the ghost in the distance gallery.
We gave him too much of a start, I'm afraid.
Of course you didn't find him. You'll never find him because he's not mortal.
Mrs. McClintock, is the original suit of armor the one worn by the first Earl of Lochnair still in the castle?
Aye, sir. It's in the library through that door there. I'll take you to it.
Don't bother, thank you. We'll find it. Come on, Watson. Bring that candle with you.
Right, Joe.
If you know what's good for you, you'll stop dabbling in that as you dinner really can.
Holmes, what do you make of the second ghost?
An imposter, obviously.
But who could it have been?
That's what we have to find out, old chap. Undoubtedly someone knew that the American Walter McMorris was impersonating the ghost and used this macabre method to kill him.
But why kill him?
Possibly his claims to the title and estate were valid. Or perhaps some fanatic was so devoted to the Lochnair legend that he assumed the role of ghost and killed him for his sacrilege. Hold the candle a little higher, will you, old chap?
Yeah. Hello. Here's the suit of armor, Holmes. Lying in a heap on the floor.
Oh, on the floor, eh? Whereas it obviously belongs on that stand over there.
It's perfectly clear what's happened. The second figure used this armor and slipped it back in here while we were examining the dead man.
Possibly, Watson, possibly. At least this armor gives us a definite clue. But it limits the field of possible suspects.
How do you mean, Holmes?
Well, it's an interesting fact that the human race has grown definitely larger in the past 400 years. Very few modern men can wear authentic ancient armor like this. For example, take the first item on the top of the heap lying on the floor here. These gauntlets of chain mail. Try them on.
Well, that's too small for me.
Neither you nor I could have worn this suit.
No, nor could young Nolan, the estate agent.
Whereas his sister could have done.
Yes, so could Thomas the butler. He's a small fellow.
And if it comes to that, Watson, our distinguished client, the young Earl of Lochnair, is himself a small man.
Right, Joe, so he is. And he might easily have had a motive. Young McMorris had disputed his right to the title earlier in the day.
But we mustn't jump to conclusions. Nevertheless, you see what valuable evidence this arm has become.
Hello. It sounds as if the rest of the party are on the scene.
Yes, I suggest that we join them without making any reference to this suit of armor. Remember, old chap, one of them in there is a murderer. And we may have to set a trap to catch him.
Hello. Oh, hello.
happened?
Are you sure he's dead, Dr. Watson?
There's no doubt about it. His neck was broken instantly by the fall.
It's dreadful. Father and son both dying on the same day.
And you said the real ghost came up behind him, Mr. Holmes, and struck him so they crashed through the railing up there.
I said another figure dressed in armor killed him, Mr. Nolan.
It was a real ghost. I saw him with my own 2 eyes. He killed that man for trying to bring shame on the name of Lochnair.
Shouldn't we get into touch with the police?
How can I get a message to them tonight? Have you looked outside? We're almost completely snowed in.
Snowed in. Oh, Alec, I'm frightened.
Hush, darling. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore.
No, at least we have the assurance that the ghost will not limp again.
Why?
Well, the murderer has no further motive for impersonating the ghost. To walk now would be to support the dead American's claims. No, we shall spend a quiet night, and tomorrow I shall communicate with the proper authorities as to my quite definite notions regarding the murderer's identity.
But if the ghost should walk again, Mr. Holmes?
Well, then, sir, I shall know that at last I have encountered a truly supernatural crime and shall retire from the practice of detection.
Oh, it's nearly 2 o'clock. You still over there by the window, puffing away that pipe of yours? You know, I can't help feeling that young McMorris knows a great deal more than he told us. A great deal more. There's a shifty look about him I don't like. Never did trust a fellow who couldn't look you squarely in the eye. Don't you feel the same way, Holmes? Holmes, where are you? Holmes!
What, Watson?
Where have you been? I thought you were over there by the window. Been talking to myself.
Never mind that, old chap. It was on in the dressing gown. We're on the last lap of this strange eventful tragedy.
Oh, thank the Lord for that. Perhaps I can get some sleep. Holmes, where have you been?
I went to the musician's gallery and baited the trap. Now it's ready to spring. Don't dawdle, Watson. Come on.
I'm not dawdling. What do you mean you baited a trap?
You'll see for yourself in a few moments. As a matter of fact, I really baited it when I said downstairs that if the real ghost should walk again, I would retire from the practice of detection.
I didn't understand your saying that myself.
Well, I was tempting the murderer to show his hand once more. Come on, please.
Where are we going?
To wait behind the curtain at the foot of the stairs leading to the musician's gallery. And I hope we don't have to wait very long.
Holmes, I'm getting a crick in my neck trying to peer through this wretched curtain. How much longer do we have to wait?
Our murderer arrived.
You certain he'll come?
Not certain, but hopeful. Extremely hopeful.
You know who it is, don't you?
Yes, but my proof is too thin for a court of law. I must catch him in the act.
Here he comes.
Splendid.
Let's go up and grab him.
No. They walk into my trap.
He's coming towards the head of the stairs. Great Scott!
Exactly. A simple piece of wire stretched across the gallery is remarkably effective, even with ghosts. Come on. Help me off with his visor.
There we are. Good Lord, it's James Nolan.
Exactly.
What happened?
You walked into a simple trap, my friend. I'm afraid the next trap will be more lethal, for it will undoubtedly prove to be the one beneath the gallows.
Now that we're headed back for London, Holmes, perhaps you'll settle 1 or 2 points in the case that are bothering me quite a bit.
Oh, with pleasure, my dear chap. What are they?
I still don't see what Nolan's motive was in murdering the American.
Oh, that should be obvious. He wanted to ensure that his sister's fiancé would enjoy undisputed title to the name of the States.
Well, how did you know it was Nolan?
When I examined the authentic suit of armor, you see, it was obvious it had never been worn.
But I still don't quite understand.
Oh, come now, old chap. The suit of armor was in a heap on the floor.
Yeah?
And if it had been hastily discarded, and yet, the gauntlets were on top of the pile, you remember?
Well, that's right, they were.
If the suit had really been worn, the gauntlets would have been the first things to have been taken off, and so would have been underneath the pile. Obviously, therefore, the armor had been disarranged in order to make people believe the real ghost had walked.
Yeah.
After the American's death, the suspects were 4. Miss Nolan, her brother, Thomas, the butler, and the Earl himself. Well, I ruled out Mrs. McClintock because, you remember, she was standing behind us at the time of the murder.
Well, I'm beginning to understand. All the suspects except Nolan were small enough to have worn the armor.
That's right. Therefore, only he could have pretended to use it.
Pretended? But he did use it.
Oh, no, my dear fellow. Undoubtedly, he procured a similar one of modern manufacture.
An amazing case, Holmes.
An interesting one at any rate. And once again, old fellow, I'm forcibly reminded of an old Scottish litany.
Scottish litany? Which one's that?
Oh, you remember it. From ghoulies and ghosties and long-legged beasties and things that go bump in the night. Good Lord deliver us.
Well, Doctor, that was really a swell story. You know, for a while there, I was beginning to believe in ghosts.
Well, I'm ashamed to admit it, but at the time, so was I.
You know, this sounds silly, but I bet it would be fun to be one of those legendary English ghosts. You know, go around sticking your nose into everybody's business and playing practical jokes like mad and nobody able to figure out who did it. That would really be fun in a way.
Well, you can go around scaring people all you want to, but not for me. I think a ghost leads a terrible life. So, for instance, a ghost can't have the pleasure of eating a nice, juicy steak.
Yeah, or drinking a glass of really good wine.
Ah, now you're talking, young fellow, my lad.
Petri wine.
Yeah, still talking, young fellow.
You see, when I say good wine, I always mean Petri wine because you can depend on Petri.
I know.
Why, the Petri family has been making wine for generations, handing on down from father to son, all their skill and knowledge and experience. When you realize they started the Petri business way back in the 1800s, well, common sense tells you the Petri family knows practically all there is to know about the fine art of turning luscious grapes into clear, fragrant wine. Yep, whether you're looking for a swell wine to serve before dinner or with dinner or after dinner, for any occasion, you just can't go wrong with a Petri wine because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Now, Doctor, what story are you going to tell us next week?
Well, now, next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you a strange adventure that Holmes and I had in the English countryside. It concerns the apparent madness of a certain Colonel Warburton and the puzzling mystery of two dead dogs.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Crooked Man. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station.
Oh, the Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you cook, remember Petri wine.
To make good food taste better, remember...
Petri wine.
This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Okay, now's the time for our highs and lows and our discussion around this episode. Let me introduce my guests. Tonight we have with us Pat Sampson, DJ Kristatos. Welcome back to 221B.
I'm happy to be back. Thanks for having me. And I just want to do a little song I learned. Just a few verses. And it goes a little something like this. Oh, the LBC family took the time to bring you podcasts that are fine. So when you listen while doing tasks, remember LONGBOX CRUSADE Podcasts. Thank you. I had a couple of Petri wines while I thought that out.
No doubt in my mind. And while we all just soak that in for a minute, let's introduce my second and final guest for this episode. It is Delvin, the Dark Web Williams. Welcome back to 221B, man.
Hey, good to be back. Just trying to get myself reacquainted after about, 3 months. Is this how we do this thing? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's how we do it.
Okay, all right, cool. Pass some of that Petri wine, baby. Let's go.
So this episode, we're just going to discuss the Petri wine portions of
I love that by the end, even Watson was like, yes, we know. Petri wine. Okay.
Yeah, we get it, Petri wine guy.
It's really tasty, and oh my God, he's still talking. Refreshing to the touch. Shut up!
Get out of my house.
It's like Watson. Either he's like, okay, I got this Petri wine, but he's also into his sherry, having that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that we know who the players are in this episode, let's get into our highs and our lows and our what does. You guys know how this works. So we'll do a couple of rounds. We'll go clockwise. We will start with Pat.
On my list of notes that I have here, and I did write down a few, so we'll see if Delvin took any of them later on. But I really like this one because the story that was being told and with the mystery, I had a couple, 3 people I was thinking it was probably going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to narrow it down to the end. And then it finally came back to being the guy that I first off right away was like, oh, it's this guy right away, because of course, if you show up to Sherlock Holmes, and it's got to be that guy that shows up first, right? Because he just doesn't want to get caught, but he's going to get caught because you're going to the right.
I'm not 100% sure Pat knows who the villain was in this episode.
Hold on. I'm not going to leave Pat out on an island. I listened to this show in part at least 3 times, and I still wasn't sure who did it. I thought it was the Earl who went to Holmes. It was either him or his cousin. It was the cousin? Jarrod's still shaking his head.
Yeah, it wasn't the Earl that went.
It's his fiance's father. Editor's note. As you will hear us discuss momentarily, we're trying to remember if the fiance's father or brother was the caretaker of the estate. It is the brother. So the correct answer here is the killer / fake ghost. Well, second fake ghost. You could see where the confusion comes in. But the ultimate killer was the fiance's brother, the caretaker of the estate. Let's clear that up now. And now we'll get back to our rather confusing discussion where I think we'll eventually iron it all out.
Oh.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
When did they say that?
At the end. But I will say this. They glossed over it kind of fast, so much so that I was like, I bet I have to explain this when we get on the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now it got me even more confused.
Did she live with her father or her brother? Whichever one that was. Whoever she lived with. Because he was the stable hand, take cares of things.
I think that was the brother.
Around the castle. Yeah, it may have been her brother.
Yeah, that was the brother. The brother.
He was basically trying to make sure that old dude got his title proper so that his sister
would get the money. Yeah, see, and that's what I was thinking. I'm like, so he's the guy that did it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm good now. I knew it was either one of the two. And right before we got on, I was trying to listen to the beginning real quick to try and get the name of the guy. And then, because I had just heard the ending before Holmes was explaining it all about, the guy who, tripped up and everything. And I missed the name. So I'm glad that you cleared it up.
It's a tricky one. Because at first they got a little derailed because they said the armor suit was small and it was only small enough to fit a few people in it and it wouldn't have fit him. But then they revealed that was a decoy because the order in which things have been removed was wrong. So it doesn't have to be a small guy anymore. It could be just
anybody
in a reproduction suit that looked the same. And that's ended up being who it was. You know what? If you're listening to this part of the show, folks, feel free to chime in on who you thought it was.
Or if you got duped like I got duped.
I tell you what, I listened to it twice, I think. And then on the second time, I was like, I'm pretty sure it was, I couldn't remember if it was her brother or father she was on the estate with originally. But I was like, I'm pretty sure it's that. And then when Holmes explains it, he goes a little fast. And I'm like, okay, it was him. But anyways, all right.
Well, either way, they had a big cast of characters in this one. And different names happening and coming at you all of a sudden, which obviously helped make the confusion of the mystery, so to say, of who it really was.
It's kind of funny because there's not a ton of folks. There's basically the Duke guy and his cousin. His cousin's dad was there, but he died early on. Remember, he died of natural causes before they even got there. So it was really the guy, his cousin. The guy who watched the estate, who ended up being the guy, the main villain. Was that the guy who met them in the road?
I think, or that's the stable hand guy, or the
I think that was him.
who went to Holmes' house to get Holmes?
The Earl.
Yeah, the Earl. So he wanted to keep his thing, right?
Yeah, it all started with the Earl.
Oh.
He had a cousin and an uncle that were staying with him.
All right.
And then also on the property, you had the maid,
I
think a butler.
Yeah.
And then there was like a guy who was like the property handler dude, and his sister, which was also the Earl's girlfriend.
Okay.
So it's not a ton. It feels like a ton because especially in a radio show, you're keeping track of all of them.
Yeah.
But then you have the guy who dies. Then you have the ghost the fake ghost that gets killed by the other fake ghost. You're just like, what in the world is happening here? And that's what I like best about it. But anyways, let's let Delvin talk for a minute.
I give Holmes credit. Geniuses make hard things simple. And sure enough, at the end, he was kind of like, he had two very simple explanations. Like one, that original suit of armor that the ghost was supposedly wearing, nobody could have worn. It was brand new. And then he saw how it was arranged, where the gauntlets were placed on top. It felt very much like a LBC crew mystery, where you have to catch that very subtle clue of, you're right, the very first thing that anybody is going to take off in a suit of armor are their gauntlets to have access to their hands to take everything else off. That makes perfect sense. And then his very simple solution, like, okay, if it's a ghost, then the ghost can walk through the strip wire, right? Nope. Clank, 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 blah, 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 blah. So very simple explanations. And then process of elimination as well. So like the older gentleman already passed away. And then once the American was like pushed 20 feet to his doom, so I was at breakfast today and I was overhearing a conversation. The guy was talking about Denzel Washington, and I think the movie was American Gangster. The thing that the guy was questioning was, why in the world wouldn't he just leave when he was on top? By the time he was caught, he had like $100 million. He was made in the shade with a glass of Kool-Aid. Same thing with the Earl's cousin. It's like, dude, all you had to do was just chill out and, not kill people. And you probably would have came up on some money, bro. You could have just waited and let things just run their course. But he couldn't. He was impatient. And even after Holmes goaded him into doing it, was like, bet you won't do it again. He was like, oh, I bet I will. Bro.
Yeah, he said he'd done all the research and he had all the documents and it was going to be rightfully his. Okay, then just let it fall out.
Just wait.
Yeah, this one definitely had a LBC crew Scooby-Doo-ish mystery vibe to it, but I did enjoy it. Let's go back to Pat. What else is on your sheet of notes? Now that we've taken the time to figure out who was who, and who did what.
I don't know. I'm still a little doopity-dooped on this one, but it, all in all, it still was a fun story. I was interested all the way in. If it kept me interested in really trying to understand, like you said, who's who in these and what are they doing, I'll give it up to the sound effects on this one. It played a lot in this with them kind of, stepping around. Even in the beginning, when they're talking about Petri wine and the guy comes to visit Watson, you can hear Watson's clock just kind of ticking. It's like, oh, right, it's an old clock on the wall ticking away like that. So I really dug it.
I always enjoy the Foley work on these as well. It's quite wonderful, very engaging. Can't say enough about it. Yeah, we mentioned production values a few times on these, and it's always there, and it's always nice.
And, especially with they use the same kind of sound effects as they kind of went through the years of this ghost. They kind of did like a sound of...
Yeah, a little sound montage.
Yeah, it's like, oh no,
like Holmes even put away one of the previous guys. Like, that helped send the guy to the gallows. Yeah, that little montage was cool. All right, Delvin, what do you got?
Didn't we cover a similar mystery like this before?
That's on my notes. The one you're thinking, if you don't mind me interrupting here.
I don't. Go ahead.
I wrote in my notes, this reminds me of the Holmes TV episode where the ghost stood up in the stairwell. Mm-hmm. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yes.
Oh, from the TV series. Okay.
From the TV series, yeah.
Yeah, like even when I started hearing it from the beginning, I was like, this sounds familiar. Is this the same one? So Jarrod doesn't have that knowing look on his face, but I was just wondering.
No. No, they're two very separate productions. The TV one was clearly a different production company. And this one, although they do this a lot, this one they said was inspired by The Adventure of the Crooked Man from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And they do this a lot on the show. They're like, this one was inspired by this. And I'm like, I know that story. And I don't know how that applies here. But no, I don't think there's really any connection other than they both sort of featured a ghost. But yeah, I do remember the one you're talking about now.
Does the Crooked Man have anything similar?
I don't remember there even being a ghost involved in that.
Okay. I was going to ask that and just see if there was any similarities. But
I feel like I've watched that one from the Jeremy Brett not too long ago, and I don't think there was a Crooked Man strong connection there. But they do that a lot of this radio episode. I think they just make it up. They're like, this episode is based on Skip Scap Skabobble by
this guy did something wrong, so we made an episode of it.
What? it's an odd one. Anything else, Delvin?
No, but that's it.
Pat?
Let's talk about the trap setup that Holmes had. I think Holmes was really cool in thinking of ways to get this ghost and figure it out. And like, well, I'm going to set up a tripwire. And, of course, you got Watson, who's like, must have fell asleep or whatever, as he's like, hey, it's 2 a.m. in the morning. What's going on? Oh, it's so funny.
I like how he just painfully obvious to the listener goaded out the guy. He's like, if I see the ghost one more time, I'll stop being a detective altogether. I'll let this whole thing go and head back to England.
and seriously, I'm just saying, if you have a killer with like on a scale of 1 to 100, if his savvy level was a 3, he would have been like, I'm not falling for this.
There's nothing I need to do to prove anything.
Yeah, I can do literally nothing and I'm going to get away with this. Literally nothing. Couldn't help it. Could not help it.
Yeah. And there's also some fun parts, too, where Holmes is like, hey, Watson, watch your head. And he hits his head on.
He called it stairs for pygmies.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that was like a seed to plant to remind everybody the human race has grown, and that became part of the solution because the armor, like I said, the real armor was too small to fit the guy who actually did it. But they mentioned the only people small enough to fit in this armor would have been the maid who was there when they saw
them,
and the fiance and her fiance, the actual Earl. Those were the only guys who were small enough to fit in it. So we kind of eliminate the caretaker.
Okay.
But then he's like, this is not the armor that was being worn. That's what brings him back into the suspicious list. But yeah, now that you mention it, I kind of just took that as a comedic bit, but it actually feeds into the everything was smaller back then, which feeds into that. So I'm glad you brought that up because to me it was just like a comedic bit.
Now for offline,
it's kind of laying the groundwork.
The only thing I got is I would like some muscatel wine. I don't know what that is, but it sounded really delicious.
Ladies love it.
Ladies love it. Yeah. And I'm a ladies man, so
I feel like I've had some Muscati.
Would it be a Moscato or
Yeah, Moscato. That's what it was.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And that's usually a sweeter wine. It has a sweetness to it, much like myself.
Your sweetness is my weakness.
Oh, Lord. It's like, did we invite Jason or no? I feel like
you don't have to. You got me. You got me.
Filling in for Jason. All right, if there are no more additional thoughts, it is time to rate this episode. We do that here on a scale of 1 to 5 pipes. 5 means you loved it. 4 means you thought it was very good. 3, it was good. And 2 was just okay. And 1 did not like it. All right, Delvin, we'll start with you. 1 to 5 pipes.
Why not? Usually at 3, I'll give it a 4 this time. Marking it up just a little bit because I actually like the simplicity of the mystery. The thing I like about Sherlock Holmes in general is he's going to go for that simplest solution. He often says that is like, or I think, how does he put it? Basically, if you strip away everything that's not possible, then whatever's left is usually it. I know I completely mangled that.
You got the soul of it. It's fine.
I got the soul of it. that's what he did. He's like, okay, I don't think it's a ghost. That makes no sense. And then once he like did a little bit of process of elimination, it's like, all right, then I think it's a human. I think I can bait a human, and I think I can literally trip a human. I like that simple solution. And that's what a genius does. A genius makes something that a guy like me can understand. So I understood it, and I'm happy. So I give it a 4.
Sounds fair and like good reasoning to me. Pat, what do you got?
Like Delvin, I liked the mystery on this one. And obviously I was duped and double duped by this one.
Don't beat yourself up, Pat. It's an easy one to miss.
No.
I had to really focus in a couple of times.
I'm not beating myself up. I know I'm dupable when it comes to this stuff, but that's what's fun because, if I'm getting duped by it, it's making me think, right? And that's what these are meant to do, is make you kind of think and figure out the mystery. And then if it was a simple mystery, then I'd be like, this one's not too good. And so I like that. So I'm with Delvin at a 4. I enjoyed this one.
I'm with you guys. I liked it at a 4 from the get-go, just because I like the setup and I like the variety of suspects and all that. And then let me tell you something. You throw in a ghost or something supernatural like a vampire or a werewolf.
Boogla.
I'm giving it a 5. I'm going up. When they were like, I was like, but Sherlock Holmes mystery is on. Oh, it's a ghost. I love the supernatural stuff in the Sherlock Holmes world. So,
did you think the second night was a ghost?
No, I didn't ever think there was an actual ghost. I mean, I know the formula of Sherlock Holmes, but I just feel like it gives it that extra twist. Like all the other ones we've listened to, I could certainly listen to again. This is one that I'd want to listen to at Halloween. We did listen to the one that was very Christmas based. I like that, to play. I think I rated that one higher than everybody else too, because it has that extra little oomph to it. So I was really quite taken with this one. All right, folks, that is it for this episode of LBC Irregulars, a Sherlock Holmes podcast radio special episode. I want to thank my guests, Delvin and Pat, for being here. Let's find out where they can be found on the internet. We'll start with Delvin.
Twitter X, DE_RAY1977. Instagram, Delvin Ray. Pat.
Well, Delvin, I'm glad you asked. You can find me on the Twitter X at Kristatos01. Jarrod?
I am at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, Instagram. It's all at Yard Sale Artist. You can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. And remember, if you want to get in on this conversation, we'd love it if you leave us a voicemail with your thoughts at 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX. Pick up the phone. One shot. Or you can comment on the show at LONGBOX CRUSADE. It's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. It's all at LONGBOX CRUSADE. We're in lots of places. You can send emails to contact@longboxcrusade.com. We will be happy to read your comments on the show. As a reminder, we couldn't do this show and all the other shows on the LONGBOX CRUSADE Network without the support of our Crusaders Club members on Patreon. And if you'd like to join their ranks for as little as $1 a month, head to www.patreon.com/LONGBOXCRUSADE. We'll now thank our Crusaders Club members as we ride off in our handsome cab. I've been your host, Jarrod Alberich, the Yard Sale Artist, and I look forward to joining you on the next episode.
Alan Wright.
Angelica Wolf.
Auburn Elvis.
Bill Beer.
Blast It or Stash It.
Braxton Underwood.
Captain Entropy.
Clark Westfield.
Clinton Robeson.
Dave Collins, the Battle Wagon.
Battle Wagon.
Ezra Gallo.
Gary Viola.
Gene Hendricks.
Gerald Green.
Jason Keene.
Jason Lady.
Jeremy L.
Jim Jarman.
Jim Meal.
Joe Thomas.
Dr. John Watson.
Josh Strickland.
Candace Ward.
Captivating Kathy Bright, the MVP.
Mark Ross, a.k.a. Clark Trent.
Matt and Lissy Paso.
Maxwell Traver.
Miranda W.
P.D. Devins.
Paul Hicks.
Rick from Jeff and Rick Present.
Rob Morgan.
Samantha Maney.
Sean Urbanski.
Spidey, 67.
Spreadsheet.
Steve Cronin.
Tim Price.
Tony Pennington.
And Toronto Constable Cop. Would it be the Battle Handsome Cab?
It could
Back in the day? It could be.
I don't have that sound clip.
Clippity-cloppity.
And Battle Handsome Cab.
Battle Cab.
Sorry. I like this one.
Couldn't help it.